Good afternoon, everybody. This is the July 14th, 2025 Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority meeting. We're going to call to order, doing a roll call. I see Arthur Babbitts is here, Grant Polson, Catherine Thomas, and was Jake going to be on site or was it going to be video?
I'm here.
No, I meant the other, Jake Edwards.
He may join late, but
Okay.
thank you.
And on the Washington side, we have Jake Anderson on the video. Marla is here in person. I don't see Doug. Eric Wilson is here, and so is Ben as well. So we definitely have a quorum. Let's proceed. Looking at the agenda, is there any modifications or additions to the agenda?
I had one request.
Okay.
I think we'd like to add, well, I'm throwing out there for consideration to add an action item so we can give staff approval to move forward with travel that needs to be booked later this fall in support of the BIP application.
Okay.
And under information, item 5, Roman numeral 5, it's talking about the BIP workshop from 1 to 3. And I have from noon to 3 on my calendar. So there's a little discrepancy there. Be nice to clean up.
I'll check that out. Attention to detail.
Let's go ahead and proceed.
Do we need a motion?
We have to, there's a motion to
Yeah,
amend the agenda,
motion to accept the amended agenda.
and I'll second that just if it didn't.
Okay, so we have motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Kat?
So that was technically to amend the agenda.
Mhm.
So now we've amended it. We can approve it.
Okay, let's go into approval and or correction of the minutes. Is there any comments or adjustments that we need to make to the June 23rd meeting minutes? If not, could I have a motion to accept?
I move we adopt the meeting notes as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Public comments. We have 2 people for the first time in person. So thanks for coming in. The room is yours. Please introduce yourself.
It's Violet Johnson. I am with Troop 5592 in Portland. I have to work on my citizenship and my community merit badge. Yes. Awesome.
You live here too.
Yeah, I live here.
You started out in Portland in Scouts and didn't want to change troops, and that's why you could drive back and forth for the troop meetings, but for community meetings, this is for community.
Yeah,
Great.
Awesome.
Good. Well, welcome. Is there anything that you would like to mention?
Is there anything that the public can do to help with?
We accept a credit card. I think that's,
Young people don't necessarily have a credit card.
it's very kind of you to offer that. And is there something? Yes. Through our communications organization, I'm sure we're going to be reaching out for public support. We've done that in the past. We are submitting 2 applications for funding for this bridge. We've got all the rest of our funding pretty well set. There's one funding grant in place right now being considered back in DC. There's a second one that will issue 1st of August. So as we get ready for that, I'm sure we're going to be contacting the public for support. And we'd love for you guys to say why you think this is an important bridge and why you support it.
Okay.
We welcome that very much. Thank you. There was a second public comment that was in the form of an email, and some of you have it. We had, I guess, a few copies, but I will read it. It's basically from Amanda Coombs. And I'm just going to read it. Hi, Michael and Mike. I'm going to try my best to join the upcoming meeting on Monday, but in case I can't attend, I wanted to put forth a public comment question to add to your agenda. And here's a comment. Is it possible to open up the committee, and she means working committees, to the public, or to those who may only be able to contribute a few hours of their time here or there? How can the public or a concerned citizen like me get involved and help in a non-formal way? So the way I interpret this, and I've had discussions with Amanda and so as others on the committee here, I think she would like to participate as a volunteer, not as a named through the two counties, a named commissioner or an alternate. And is there a way that she could do that? She's provided some comments about she'd like to get involved in the communication team or other teams. This is the second person that has actually raised this question. There's another one that's out in the public right now that has filed an application to Washington, Klickitat County to join the team as an alternate, I believe. But in the meantime, he would like to get involved and probably on the Budget Finance Committee. His background is international banking, a lot of grant work and so on. But he's asking kind of the same question. Can these, like the Budget Committee, what's the process for accepting somebody from the community as a volunteer to come on, provide comment? They realize they can't vote, but they would like to get involved in the system.
So what I could offer on that right now is that the meetings are public meetings. The committee meetings included are public meetings. And
We're not publishing them because we don't.
we're not publishing that.
We don't have a quorum on them, so we don't publish them. We could start doing.
Okay, in that case, that would be something that would require a rules change.
Yeah,
Because I thought,
we have not been putting.
Yeah, when we formed them, I remember for a period they were, and then
Right.
we changed.
So that we could put them in. I mean, we can put them out.
I mean, the other thing I will
Informal.
add
it's
is,
just a matter of publishing because they're all on Zoom anyway or on whatever Teams, whatever we're using.
About the committee meetings.
Well, I know my committee is,
On Teams.
On Teams.
Yeah.
but that's on Zoom or Teams
Okay.
or whatever we use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would just be a matter of letting public know that they're happening.
Okay. Is that-
Okay, well, it's something worth, we'll have to take that up then and look at whether there's any rules changes necessary to make that happen or.
the other thing I will just add, the first woman whose comment was read, I've been in contact with her, and through the communications committee, we've already been underway to plan a community-led letter of support for that application. And what I had expressed when I met with her was that I think that's absolutely a space where we want to activate people in the community. I think it's a reminder to all the commissioners that getting the public informed and aware of how they can help doesn't have to stay limited into like committee attendance. How do we activate the community? And so with the BIP application coming up, we've already been having those discussions in our committee. And if I would certainly say, if you're hearing from anybody else, send them along because we're about to want to set a high goal for signatures on that letter.
In terms of people helping in the communications area, if people understand what the actual facts are and know where to get those facts and then can help disseminate those through social media or correct them when they see things that are going out there incorrect, that's tremendous assistance to getting the proper message out there.
And that was something we talked about last meeting. I think that you weren't here, but we did talk about that a little bit.
Yep, my teammate shared it.
Yep.
So how do we want to proceed with this?
I think you assign that to my committee and we will have to talk about that and figure out if we need a rules change or what.
Right. Just one comment on this is that, we don't, we're grateful to have the public attendance, but we don't tend to have a lot of attendance even at our regular meetings. If there's additional cost or burden associated with having subcommittee meetings be public, we might look and see, is that really what people are like, how people want to contribute? Is to sit in on the meetings, or is it, are people looking for ways that they can contribute, be it like a letter writing campaign or like a social media engagement, or if it's funding and finance, like
Or bake sale.
searching for searching for grants, like being able to put out kind of a like these are our funding streams. Like if you're into grants, like are there other funding streams that you could see us participating in, or if they're the right person, taking a draft, having an opportunity to, read a grant application before it goes out, something like that, and give feedback. Like those might be more of the sort of specific ways that somebody that doesn't have a lot of time would feel like they could actually, help with the bridge, rather than, sitting in a meeting that, where really it takes a lot of time to get up to speed where you can, add any value.
Yeah, I think it's how do we activate people in the right way based on the time they're able to give? And I think that could be a combination of the governance committee looking into if we want to open up some of the committees for public attendance and recording. But then I think to your other point, certainly, and I don't know that that needs to stay in a committee. I think that's also all of us commissioners sending ideas potentially over to staff, but through the communications committee, we did lose JLA, and that was the public involvement component for communication support. And with that went some of those occasional conversations on Facebook or presence at farmers market. And if there are other things there, maybe we want to revisit reactivating some of that and seeing as a committee, commissioners, what of those lifts could be things that we're actually doing in our capacity and what things might require additional support, and kind of bring that back for consideration. But I agree. I think there's certainly that gap still of how can people quickly get in the time that they have, the understanding of where the project is, how they could get involved if they wanted to, and what those options are.
Right. So the question is, how do they know what there is that they could contribute?
Yeah.
And without, I think that it feels to me like the committee meetings are where a more informal discussion of that could happen, but it may be that maybe there's another mechanism to do that.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe it's maybe there's a way we could figure out what the level of interest is. Like, are we talking about 2 people that want to be involved, or is the interest really much broader? And we could, if we put an ask out, we could get, 30 people that wanted to contribute in different ways and could actually activate them.
To me, I think it's worth spending a few calories to think about how do you want to handle this. I know personal experience with the port. Before I was elected, I tried to volunteer, and the port had a policy and a process that basically was extremely cumbersome, and I elected not to play.
Right.
So I think it's kind of important that we be careful how we set this up that encourages people, not discourages people.
I think
Edwards is Johnny stuff.
Every organization has their own attitude about this, and I think that it's pretty clear that the port was doing what the port intended to do at that time, and that I sense that we as a group are not of that mind, and we're looking to open it up more. We're looking to encourage people to come to our meetings, to watch what's going on, to participate where possible, and so I will look into ways of making that happen.
Could we impose that in a couple of weeks when we come back together, you give us a status of where it stands?
Yeah, we'll talk about our next committee meeting.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, co-chair's report. Jake, anything you want to mention?
I don't have anything to add. I think that, just to follow up on where we were going with that last conversation, if we have 2 people over the course of the last year who are interested in volunteering and we want to activate them, I think each person has their own special skills, and we want to accept that however we can. Probably, but that seems like it's more defined on each person. Like, I don't think that, we don't have a whole lot of public participation in our meetings. I think we'd have even less public participation in our committee meetings. So maybe that's not the best way to do it. I think with what Marla and the committee's doing to activate the letter writing campaign, that's exactly what we need to be pushing people to do. There is so much misinformation that's being spread online right now about this project and the port and everything else. I think that's where a lot of this volunteer activism can go, because we all can't be watching Facebook all the time. And other than that, I don't have any updates at the moment.
Project director update.
Yeah, so quickly on the funding that we're embarked on, we have the agreement signed. ODOT has to give us a notice to proceed. They're going through the process to be able to do that. We anticipate that in the next week or so to come back from ODOT. They have told us that we can retroactively charge starting June 13th. So that'll be coming. That's our current source of funding. We're also working with WashDOT on their additional 40 million that they program to the project. One of the things with that we're trying to do is align the categories between WashDOT, ODOT, and FHWA, so that when we're submitting our grant applications, that it's easily transferable between them, and we can see where match money is aligning between the three. So we're working with WashDOT to get their buckets of money and how they break it up situated to have that. So as soon as we can get that coordinated between the three of them, we'll be able to finalize that WashDOT agreement and give that, we'll have access to that 40 million.
One of the thoughts that we've talked a little bit about, just to bring everybody up. Once we get access to all three of those pots, we want to hit all three of those pots. So in the eyes of the states or the feds, we have an active project. We're not just sitting on a bunch of money.
Yeah, and we'll have to do that through the match requirements as well. So we're anticipating getting the infrared agreement before the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. They asked us if we would be able to obligate those funds before the end of the fiscal year, and we said yes. So we're just waiting on them to finalize that, but we have not heard back from the DC federal offices yet on our infrared agreement. So, but yeah, we would plan to separate that money between the three.
And again, a clarification. So I think what you just said is that we have to get money from each of the three because of the match requirements. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, there's state match money requirements on the federal money, so we have to make sure we're meeting those requirements.
You don't have to meet those requirements every invoice.
Correct. It has a summary that you have to have it.
And to achieve that, we need to hit all three.
We need to.
Okay.
But
Or at least
what we're saying is that they've allocated money. Now they're going to be watching to see if we're spending it.
Right.
So let's make sure we spend out of each pot.
Right.
The travel MOAs, we're working through that with FHWA. They're at different levels right now. Umatilla recently canceled their meetings and requested a government to government meeting over the comments that were made on their MOA by FHWA. So that meeting is getting set up. We'll see if we're invited to that. I don't know if we will or we're not, but
Misty, Aaliyah did invite us. Aaliyah did share the invite. Did you not get that?
recently.
Yes.
Can you say that again, please?
Aaliyah did follow up and she was going to share that invite. It was created by Misty, but she said she was going to share that invite. So we're definitely getting invited to that. That's not the last email I had, but that was
Okay.
end of last week. So
Okay.
unless something's changed.
We'll need to check on that.
Yep.
We just had a meeting with First today. We're making good progress on their MOA, trying to work through that. There is an outstanding item of a communications plan that we need to develop with Cryptic. So we're working on that, and that will be part of those MOAs, and that's one of the things that has to be complete prior to the MOAs getting complete. All of the MOAs need to be completed prior to starting construction. They used to be tied to our rod, if you remember. That was removed, and we can move forward with our rod. But we do need the MOAs to be completed before we can start construction. So we're trying to get them done long before that, but that will be a requirement at some point if we don't get those completed before we start construction.
Could you explain the government to government contact that they've requested?
Yes.
Which government do they?
The FHWA, so
Okay.
federal
So they want the
government.
federal government to try.
Yeah, they see it because they are a sovereign nation.
Yep.
They like to have their nation meet with
I just wasn't sure if it's the state or the feds or
It's the
the
feds.
counties or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, that's the feds.
Yep.
And that's Umatilla.
Umatilla has requested that, yes.
Okay, previously Warm Springs had requested that.
They have, and no meeting has been coordinated yet with Warm Springs, so, they're still trying to arrange a meeting with them, but, that has not moved forward.
So this issue with cryptic, when we're talking about communication, you can make it a great big deal or you can make it very simple. And we're trying to propose that we make it very simple. And basically, the tribes need to know, they request, I want to go fish in this area. Can I go fish it safely? So we're setting up a protocol that basically ask us if you want to fish. And we can look very quickly and respond to you instead of we looking 6, 8, 12 months down the road, which is very difficult to do. Because most of the time when they request a fish, it's tomorrow.
Right.
So we're trying to set up a system that way. Yep.
But we're not setting up a new system because we don't want to have the different tribes figure out a new software system on top of everything else. So that's why we're going through CritFic, which is what CritFic wants us to do, is to go through the already established system. So everyone knows, and there's not something new, like we don't have to re-educate the different tribes. This new system you have to learn.
One point of contact,
Correct.
and then we're just adding our information to that.
As opposed to adding a whole new email chain, a whole new email list. That was initially the discussion, and we thought that's causing a lot more.
So one little interesting piece for you maybe is that the proposal is that we're going to number the piers out on the old bridge. And when we say they want to fish between pier 6 and 7, west of the bridge, that's a zone. East of the bridge, that's a zone. So eventually you'll see numbers on the piers out there, both upstream and downstream.
Just so that people watching understand what we're talking about. So CritFic is Columbia River Intertribal Fisheries. And so that is a group which all the tribes participate in, which maintains and guarantees the safety and participation of all the tribes in the fishing. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of are the central coordinator of the fishing seasons. So the tribes all sit and are members of
So
that.
that's how we're centralizing this so that we're not talking to each
We're not talking to 4 different groups. We're talking to one.
Yeah.
And they've already got the protocol set up, how communication spreads from them.
So ideally what we're looking to set up is that when CritFic knows they're going to set up a season, they would call us and say, hey, we're going to open the season from date X to date Y. Do you guys can we fish in that area? Yes or no? We can say yes. They can put that in their notification and they can send it out. And it doesn't really interrupt any of their normal everyday communication protocols. And just for clarity on that zone, we're talking 300 feet downstream, 300 yards downstream, 200 yards upstream. A lot of that area is already restricted due to existing restrictions on fishing. But there are some small areas. The channel will always stay open, so they'll always be able to travel up and down. So that's been an area of clarification as well.
Can we just ask for this to be an informational item presentation as that communication plan is finalized? So we all have awareness.
Yeah, no, once we haven't met, we had one preliminary meeting with CritFic that they said, yeah, they'd be open to being the point for the communications. We're working on setting up a second meeting with CritFic in order to dive into how it all will actually function. Once we get kind of a draft plan together, then we'll bring that back to everybody for input on how that'll work and make sure it is acceptable by the group.
And the point that you made.
Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, the point that you made is that the tribes, well, it seems like, hey, should they be able to make a plan a year in advance of when fishing is going to be? It's not. It's based on what's happening in the river. And so they frequently don't know until the very last minute.
Yep.
And to work with them, we have to have that flexibility in our system.
Yeah.
Right. And otherwise, we're spending a lot of money spinning our wheels and the information will never be used.
Right. Yeah.
And CritFic takes directions from the tribes. So we are never going to have an MOA with CritFic because they have to be approved for the communication from the tribe. So we have done another presentation to all the tribal members who belong to CritFic on top of that initial meeting to make sure that everyone's aware on top of the tribal meetings that we've had with the individual tribes. So we're ensuring that all the players are aware and there's communication. The issue now is they want to have some, government to government meetings that we are asked to be at for just to be there to answer questions, but it's not usually us talking. It's a lot more the other people, which is great, honestly.
Okay, keep going, Mike.
Okay, the appraisal is now underway for the fair market value of the 6F parcels over at the port. And Teal's here if we've got specific questions. They were out there today doing a site visit and looking at some of the site. What they'll do is it'll be about 60 days roughly. They'll give us a price. We'll bring that back to the board and say, hey, would they think it's roughly going to be in this range of cost? Then we'll work with staff to identify potential parcels and with you all to identify potential parcels. We'll bring that back to the group. The group will have to vote on kind of the prioritization of parcels that they want to use for mitigation. And then we will go have the appraiser go out and appraise those mitigation parcels, and it has to be a dollar for dollar equal. Can't be less, even, what'd you say, $20,000 less, it has to be more. They don't care how much more if you're willing to give more, but it can't be less. So, and OPRD will have to look at those parcels and verify that they have recreational purpose that would meet their requirements. So they do have a sign off on it as well. But once we get that dollar amount, we'll know how much we're looking at, and then we'll have to identify it. I would like to keep it to, 3 or 4 parcels so that we can not do 10 appraisals. We can do a limited number of appraisals for the top priority parcels. And then once we know what those are, then they'll do the second round, which is a more formal appraiser.
We have a target map of target potential.
We have, I think, 5 or 6 parcels that have been identified over the years. The port has given us a handful. We know the one on the Washington side is one. There's a couple recreational parcels that I've been told about up in Hood River County. So we'll dig into those more. We haven't really dug into them deeply. We've just been kind of collecting. When we mention this in a meeting or something and somebody goes, oh, I know a parcel, we kind of write it down and say, okay, let's take a note of that parcel.
I think the key thing is you're going to be finishing up the appraisal
in the next 60 days.
Okay, so right after that, so timing is right now to identify these other properties that we want to look at.
So I was talking to Teal today about I would like to start bringing those lists of parcels to the group and have you guys prioritize them. Say, okay, here's our top 5 or top 3.
So because this involves public recreation, one could assume that the public's going to be very interested in it. And we know that Tracy Thomas Follows Online has already sent a letter on the subject. What is the nature of the public involvement in this evaluation of mitigation sites?
It would be up to you guys to determine that. There's no requirements by the federal policies to allow public input into it. If you all want to allow a period for public comment, then that's something you all need to.
So it would be natural to do that as a function of our discussion of these issues as a board, and we take public comment as a board on items that we discuss.
That's what I would do is once you prioritize the, handful of parcels that you were going to mitigate, because the parcels that you mitigate, you don't have to take ownership from, right? But the person that does own it has to be willing to make it a 6F recreational parcel, theoretically forever. And so, you have to have a willing seller that's willing to do that. It would make sense. It'd be nice to do that where there's benefit to the communities that are losing it, right? Again, that's not necessarily required by the regulations. So that's part of the discussion as well. So I think there is some steps here to walk through. And if you want public input for people to say, hey, we'd like it here, or we'd like it over there, or this makes sense or that, you guys can at least take that into consideration when you're processing.
You brought something up that I hadn't even thought about, and that is who is going to own the land after we buy it? And the question I would have is, does the authority want to own land not associated with the bridge? Or do we want to do something different with it, like Park and Rec or city or?
You don't have to own it at all. The person that owns it just has to agree to, like I said, allow this to the dedication of that thing.
That doesn't make a lot of sense because they still have all the liability if somebody gets hurt on it.
Yeah, I'm not certain that that's the case. I think you have to buy it.
It's told us that we did not have to
I don't think the governing.
You might have to buy it.
Sure would allow.
Sell it. You.
I mean, I think, you know, if you're technically donating towards property.
Hey, we would donate it over.
Great. So it might end up needing to be the courts, the whole point of buying, again. For the bridge, so it might end up being. Might end up being the court. I honestly, I don't know. It's not something-
Can we get that answered, I
Yeah.
guess, because that's.
So we'll get clarification on this. The last conversation I had with the feds was that you did not have to have the parcel.
So we would potentially trade land, that's the port's land, and then the port would own, is that what your understanding is, just to repeat it back to you, is that the port would own the land? But wherever we,
I don't think it has to be the case. It's just, who are you mitigating for? You know, if we're mitigating for the port so that we can buy the port's land. I don't know what the technicality is on that, but I'll.
I imagine there's like an interlocal agreement structure that would get triggered as we identify the solution.
So we, as a board, at some point are going to be identifying parcels to acquire to mitigate the loss of recreational parcels from this bridge project. And so we should just be really clear as to when we are going to be making that decision and make sure that that process is sufficiently clear that people understand what's going on.
What we'll do is get an outline of that process. That'll probably happen over the next 2 months. We'll bring you back a presentation of here's the parcel, here's the process that it takes to do it. And we can kind of work that process. It will be a timely, if it's not going to be like makes a decision today and tomorrow it's going to happen, there is a back and forth process that'll need to happen through that.
Right, we should
But
think.
it's early in the schedule to do this.
Yeah, we should do it.
I mean, I would, well, one, maybe we talk about this further during general discussion, but also to throw out there now, if we want to stay in this topic. I'm inclined to think, one, what was the information gathered during the initial evaluation of this triggering a loss? And was there any public input then that we could refer to get insight into what were the key concerns raised? And if not, then I would almost say it would behoove us ahead of deciding on parcels to do some outreach into the community to understand what values or things from the recreation that's being lost they're prioritizing, so that when we're then looking to identify down land to consider, we're informed by what we know people desire most to be replaced, and whether that's about proximity, geography, or features, or whatever attributes.
Yeah, and it'd be best for us to put a presentation together about because it's not so much a public input process on what was classified as 6F impact. A lot of what was impact was just the port buildings, the port grass around the building, the parking lot in front of it is all 6F. So it's recreational because it's 6F. It hasn't necessarily been completely used as that in the past.
Interesting. So those elements of their facilities are being accounted for, not the actual walkway or green space.
Well, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of things going on with that because the facilities where they sit are not necessarily supposed to be, they are not supposed to be within the 6F properties.
right. If you remember, before the port's offices were moved there, that was property that was used recreationally. There was a windsurfing school there. There was a restaurant, and the yard around it was used recreationally. And so what happened was an accident of history that the 6F property was lost. And we now have to replace that anyway.
So we're mitigating their loss.
Yes.
Mitigating.
Yes, we are.
Unmitigated impact is what they call it.
Who regulates this, the 6F?
National Park Service, right? And the Oregon Parks and Recreation Division. So each state.
Have we asked if the bike lanes that we're putting in
We can
contribute?
We tried to get the whole, and I thought, a very good argument that the whole bridge was a recreational purpose, especially with the bike lanes, and they said no.
Good thinking, Matt. I mean, that's a good man.
We
Yeah,
did.
I mean, it is a lot of recreation.
We thought that made a ton of sense, and we tried that. And they were told
Particularly
about
with
it.
kind of driving themes.
So it's not there today, and you're.
One community and
Mhm.
a new public space.
But I think it's important that we know that, Tracy's the only person who's commented on this so far, but it's really natural to assume that there's going to be a lot of public interest.
Yeah.
I would agree if we're getting to a decision point without having some basic understanding of what the community thinks.
Right.
I think we would be remiss.
I agree with that. Once you get your maps of the potential candidates and we have a chance to talk about it, then I think we need to think about, okay, how do you roll this out to the community and how do you get their input if we decide we want to get to input?
Is there, sorry to, I just asked some more questions on this, because it does seem like we need some kind of process, like there's, like there's a lot of different types of recreational projects that we could buy or mitigate. And it'll probably be like, other than just the bridge, I mean, I don't know, maybe nobody will notice because it'll be some property that'll be somewhere that doesn't get used, but if it does, or people do pay attention, it certainly could be. Are we able to invest in something as part of the could we build, we built a park, for example, does the money that you spend to build out the park also contribute to the 6F, or is it just buying the land?
It's the land. I think it's bare land to bare land. That's how they do it.
Dollar value.
There's
At one point, I thought it was improvement, land in and.
They
I think there are a lot of
value the
questions, Neil.
improvements on the existing. I don't think they allow you to project future improvements on the new land, but it looks like this is a good topic to do a good topic to do a walkthrough with everybody on. I kind of figured it would be, so let us put together a 6F process, and we walked through it with you all as far as the requirements of the land and the area and what we had to take, but now let's switch and
We're
come back
getting closer now to reality.
of actually doing it. So we'll come back and give you the second set of presentation, which is now here's your options of how to mitigate for this and what that means.
Here's the appraised value, because it's of what it is, not what it has to be used for. So they're not appraising it as 6F land, they're appraising it as best use.
Yeah,
So
highest and best use.
So if you imagine where that is, it's going to be really great for the next generation of where 6F land will be.
But also some guidance on what principles we're considering as we evaluate it. I think Tracy pointed out some things in her letter that I hadn't thought of, and I don't necessarily agree with the points that she made, but there were good points as to what she values and what she thinks the public would value, and we have to have that conversation.
Yeah. And her
Let's keep moving forward, guys, so we're going to run out of time here. Good comments. Good discussion.
With that. Sorry, next to the, just real quick on the other funding, we have not heard anything on our infra grant. We're still waiting from DC to hear something back on that. The bridge investment program, we have done a number of interviews with local folks. We have done a lot of analysis with the benefit cost analysis, and your benefit cost ratio is now back above 1.5.
Second grant.
On the second grant, 26. So if you remember, because of some of the changes or proposed changes that may come through, there was concern that we had dropped down below 1. We've been able to reevaluate those and reanalyze them, and we were able to get back to 1. We're a little over a 1.6 now. So we've got a little bit of cushion, which keeps us highly recommended in the BIP application. So that was.
Are we doing a scenario too of if you were to take a really conservative approach to the formula and
So we
draw different conclusions around some of the benefits we're forecasting? What is the lowest possible number we're at right now and see? Okay.
And Wednesday, we're going to walk through the details with the communications. So we've walked through some different, with some different committees so far. And you guys are next on the Wednesday meeting. So we did 2 last week. We're doing you guys this week. So we'll walk through the details of how they came up with the number and what they used and who we talked to. And we did a scenario of what, good thing about when Chris and them do it, they are very conservative in how they put it together because they don't want anybody to take away points. But they did identify a couple areas where they may, they could, but we can still stay above 1.5 even with that. Our highest risk area was 0.1. So we would go from like 1.7 to 1.6. So that
Has ODOT released the new Excel sheet or the new?
Or USDOT?
Yes, I apologize. They have not?
No.
Would you like me to follow up with our contacts who said it was coming soon?
If you want to,
Okay.
yeah, we have not seen them yet.
Got it.
So what Catherine was asking about is that USDOT is supposed to release a new model that takes into account the changes for the BIP for fiscal year 26, which is a change to the discount rate from 3% to 7%, which is what dropped us from our previous 1.87 to 0.8. They have not released that model yet. We have a model that we do independently that kind of projects those same things. And that's what we're using to kind of generate our number. So if the model does not come out before August, then we will submit it stating kind of using your previous released model, here's what our number would be. Taking into consideration all the things that you said in the NOFO, here's where we would be. They may come out at some point and tell you to resubmit using the model if they do bring one out. We're not really sure. We've heard nationally there's different people taking different approaches. We think the best approach is to go ahead and recognize that there was a difference and that there's been a projected difference and make sure that you've came back and said how you meet it. The other approach is to let them take all of your information and come up with their own analysis of whether you meet it or not. And we don't think that's a good recommendation for you.
Especially if we're under one.
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So we'll see. It's kind of a little bit of a moving target right now, but there's differing opinions on whether August 1st will hold or not hold. Some people think it's going to hold. Some people think that they might shift it and push it out a little bit for the month.
But I think we're doing the right thing, being ready to go for
Yeah,
August 1st.
we're trying to be prepared, make sure we're ready to go. Most important thing is that we got back to a highly recommended, which is where we need to be. So.
And all the committees before that time will have seen the new assumptions that have been made. There's a couple key ones in there that you pay
We'll
attention.
walk through who all we talked to and how we took them in to account. You can ask.
Arthur, you had another comment?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, in our last public meeting, we were told about the large change in the discount rate and what a huge impact that has on our model. And now we're hearing that it's swung entirely, hugely in a different direction. Is there a one sentence explanation of what happened?
There were some things that we were more conservative on than we are this time. One of them being the seismic. So we went back and we've taken a more aggressive approach with seismic impact, which had a big impact on it. Their model also predicts closures of the structure. We've used their numbers instead of ours, which were a little more aggressive than what we had. That also built up the number. And then we looked at benefits that we had not looked at before, some educational benefits, EMS response benefits, fruit spoilage benefits. And they're not too much when you say benefits, they're avoided impacts.
Right.
Is really what they end up being, avoided losses.
Yep.
So we've taken into account some of those additional ones. And that's what when we go through a committee, but that's the high level of what they were.
Thanks.
Anything else on your report?
Thank you.
The government relations, let's start with the feds. Is
Have a legal update?
Legal
Oh,
did not have any changes from last month, so we were waiting on. I'll send it out if I get another update.
I guess I just had one question, and maybe it is more for you, but I'd requested that we get a thorough review and a capture of that info agreement where they call out the changes that are unique to this administration that they're holding any recipient of federal funds to. And was that relayed to our legal team? Have they done that, or is that on their
Legal did
radar?
review our applications as they went back in and had no issues with the applications.
I think it's more a breakdown so we can see a side by side of is this administration holding agencies to new requirements or obligations in order to receive any sort of federal funding? And we should be really clear as commissioners and an authority on what those requirements may be before we're authorizing signature and receipt.
I guess I'll have to follow up with you on specifically if there's things.
We don't know what they are, so we don't know if they're things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's a reference against past federal funds, which we have received as an agency, and then checking it against what new language might be in there. Or what's removed, like, being in receipt of federal funds at a city agency. Certainly we're seeing changes to some of the federal civil rights legislation from the 1960s and requirements that we've been held to for decades. So I think it's those kinds of comparisons.
So the one thing that we did check was against they had a list of items that you had to agree to make sure that your application did not include or that you recognized, which were federal in the general terms of the agreement. And those we agreed to all of those. They were just reinterpretation of what federal regulations were already out there. So we had those that we agreed to. I don't think there's anything in addition or new, other than, to me, it was a different interpretation of what might have been out there before.
Well, I think just that report from legal before we're authorizing signature, which, sounds like it will be minimal, but I think that's due diligence on our part to just be aware of how contracts are changing.
Part of that was when we took the vote on it, so we'll follow all federal regulations and compliance. That you guys voted on a couple meetings ago, that was part of that. We would stay in compliance with the requirements of the current federal administration. So the authority adopted that policy, so.
Are we saying there may be one that we're not going to?
I think what I'm asking for more directly is an analysis from our legal team, once they've reviewed the contract we're in receipt of, to release the funding, and it's gotten through all stages, to do a report, a readout for all of us to understand what has changed in terms of requirements that agencies had been held to, or new requirements that are inserted that are more in line with new changes through executive order, other administrative actions. But we should all, as commissioners, be clear, we're about to be in receipt of federal funding. And as the landscape is shifting on other areas, what we might be obligating this agency or the authority to also be in compliance with. So I think it's a report that needs to be furnished by our legal team and their evaluation and analysis, and then we can all be in receipt and just have that knowledge.
So where this is going to potentially impact the next decision, which is the second grant going in August, before August 1st. So you need to jump on this.
No, my request is for the infra where we've had funds awarded and now we're in receipt of them.
You're wanting it on the agreement side. not
Yeah,
on the application.
where we're about to receive funds. I mean, hopefully we have that problem and we're in receipt of a BIF award as well, but I think this is more on that back end, having gone through the process and what.
Like contractual,
Yeah.
how is that?
What are we held to?
Vary from.
Yeah.
The contract.
Are there new
we had
reporting
2 years
requirements? Yeah.
Got it. That's fair.
Okay, we'll get that summary.
Okay. So nothing else from the legal side you and I talked about earlier. Government relations, let's go to DC first. Jim, or who else? Jim or Jake?
Yeah, I think Jake's on here as well. Yeah, I mean, we've been in regular communications with the delegation, letting them know that we're expecting the infra project agreement and the CDS funds to be popping soon, keeping them in the loop on that as we are waiting, so they know it's with headquarters. We're also been working with Dan and the communications committee and preparing for, once we do have the green light, to go ahead and sign the agreement and are moving forward to go out, press statements and other things. So, those things will be teed up once we get that. We have pinged both Federal Highways as well as the Office of Secretary to see if we can get any intel on what the timing might be. We are consistently getting back that they're working through the backlog and they don't have updates on specific project agreements. So, we're hopeful, they've been picking up the pace in terms of what they've been releasing. So we're hopeful something will be coming soon. And, piggybacking on what Mike had said, clearly they, sounds like, the division offices have done what they need to do, and it's now with headquarters. So hopefully we can get that sign off quickly. Yes,
So,
sir.
Jim, question for you, actually expressive a concern that I'm starting to generate on the infra agreement. We got a question, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? Do you want the money to be obligated, or can you obligate the money before the end of September or after the end of September? And of course, we said we want it now, which means we have to obligate the money before the end of September. My concern is, if this is the end of September, that agreement keeps sliding every month, every week. And we're just squeezing this thing, and I have little confidence that anybody knows when that agreement's going to get signed. And is it time to start educating our advocates that we may need a little push to, come on, we've signed everything, we've got everything to you. You got to get off the dime and finish this thing. That end of September date is moving on us.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. You know, I don't think there's any legal obligation necessarily because I think it goes, Mike can correct me, I think it's 2026 is when the actual obligation deadline is for these funds. But I think from an administration standpoint, they want to be able to say that they're moving these projects, they're turning dirt, they're moving forward. So I think they're looking for projects that can obligate quickly, but it's a fair point and we can start to communicate that, you know, if the anticipation is this is going to get obligated by the end of the fiscal year, you know, we need that agreement signed sooner rather than later, or else you're putting us in a really bad spot.
Well, they're getting to that point now. We want to finish the deal with the Kiewit on design. But I would feel a lot better if we had that infra grant money approved as we make that commitment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's a good point as well. We can definitely, you know, include that in some of our communications and push them on that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, the last thing, you know, had a conversation last week with the communications committee, as well as, you know, with Dan and Mike, working on trying to set up a DC trip and how to structure that. You know, we haven't, you know, we're targeting the dates in September right now. I don't know if that's been finalized. Obviously, you know, the authority is going to make that final decision, but, you know, we, you know, are targeting, you know, looking at federal highways, Buy America Bureau, potentially the White House, and then obviously our delegation. But, you know, hopefully by then, you know, we'll have a lot of good news to be reporting to them, as well as a pending BIP application, and, you know, thank yous to them for their letters of support. So, you know, we hopefully we'll be locking that in and start moving forward with trying to get some of those meetings set up soon.
Great, thanks. Let's go over to Oregon with Dan or Maddie.
Hi, everyone. The big news is already past us, which is that the legislature is finished, included an allocation for the project of 105 over 3 biennium. We're still waiting for the governor to sign that bill, which is a omnibus spending bill. She has 30 weekdays to do that, and they go through and have the Department of Justice review each of these bills. So upon that, it becomes effective. And a lot to celebrate there. You have a delegation that did amazing work, and Representative Helfrich and Senator Bonham in getting that funding, and obviously a leadership team in the legislature that was wanting to make that happen. Representative Smith within the Republican team on Ways and Means was extraordinarily helpful as well. So just a lot of great news in that regard. And I think most recently been trying to help generate some support for federal projects, grant applications. Dan asked me to explain a little bit of the changes on the Joint Transportation Committee. As you all will recall, there was no transportation package that was passed in the legislature. And that actually produced some devastating news for a variety of agencies, most notably ODOT. There have been a number of layoffs that are ongoing through the summer. There is an active conversation about trying to do a transportation package in a special session that we would expect sometime in the next couple of months. If the politics are able to do that, that would likely be a much smaller package than the bill that was ultimately sent forward by the committee. It would be enough, I think, to try and stem the real funding crisis that exists at ODOT, as well as help local agencies that are likewise suffering, and hopefully can help get through until a conversation can re-begin on a larger package, or at least go simultaneously. The Joint Committee has new leadership in Senator Pham, who has replaced Senator Gorsuch. On that as the co-chair, you are all quite familiar with Senator Pham, who most of her tenure in legislature was Representative Fan, has been out to visit the project, been very supportive. You have met with her. And then Representative McLean remains the co-chair in that regard. So other than that, the committee is largely the same, but there is a new co-chair on the Senate side who, like her predecessor, has been very supportive of the project. So at this point, we are awaiting a signature from the governor, and then we'll obviously continue to engage on the project and making sure that stakeholders are fully vetted with what's going on. But if you get a chance in your community to thank Representative Helfrich and Senator Bottom profusely, I would take every opportunity to get a chance to do that.
Yeah, I would encourage the commission to do that. I've already done it. I've called both of them. And we appreciate it. Hey, Danny, you bring up a point, going back over to Jim for just a minute. We haven't updated, but does the Department of Transportation is looking at our first BIP grant? Do they know that we got full funding from Oregon now?
I'm sorry, do they know about the state funding packages?
Yeah.
That's something we've talked about. We need to make sure we communicate that. We'll make sure that happens right away. I think that may have already occurred, but we'll make sure of that.
Okay, thank you.
I see.
If no other comments on Oregon, let's go over to Washington and.
Just have a very short question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have to be cautious at all because the governor hasn't signed it?
Yes. Especially if they call a special session.
I
wouldn't personally, I don't know if I'd be doing a lot of bragging publicly.
Well, I know that, but I kind of want to hear what Dan has to say about that.
So the only caution I think you need to express is that the funding is not final until the governor signs it. So I think I think in our press release we indicated that the governor has not signed it, that she will sign it, and that's when the funding's. I think we absolutely need to celebrate and talk about that, but the process is the process, and it requires a signature from the governor. I don't think a special session will be revisiting any of the other funding allocations on the bonding legislation at this point. It really the two dominant features of a potential special session would be a transportation package. And then if we are far enough along in understanding potential impacts to the reconciliation bill, to Oregon's budget, and if that is producing some adjustments that need to be done in the near term, depending on when that special session is held, you could see someone trying to add in some kind of a reconfiguring of particularly the general fund budget. I have no concerns around where we are in this, but we do absolutely need to be respectful of the fact the governor has not yet signed the bill, and that's part of the process.
And so as a follow-up, have we identified what impacts the lack of the transportation package has on our project? We've been using ODOT in multiple ways. They've been generous with their resources. Do we know if we're not going to be getting some of the support that we've been getting so far? Presuming no transportation package.
I reached out to Rob, nobody directly related to the project. Sam Hunati retired. But it wasn't directly related to this. He just retired.
Okay.
But nobody else so far that was been directly on the project has had any impacts. Now, if other people within their departments, could it impact their workload? Yes.
And so we haven't heard, there hasn't been an evaluation yet.
It's not old enough yet to really say.
We haven't heard anything back yet that has suggested that it's been an impact yet.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Oregon. Let's go Washington, and Dan, why don't you give a.
Thanks, Chair Fox. Brad Boswell couldn't make it today, so I just have one quick update from Brad. And he's working right now to secure a bridge investment program letter of support from our champions in the Washington legislature. They submitted one of these letters last time around, so we expect they will do so this time as well. That's also something that Dan and Maddie are working on with our champions in the Oregon legislature as well. So due date for that is August 1st. So that buys us time between when the Oregon governor has to sign the spending package and when we have to submit our letters of support. So you'll be sure that both of those legislative letters will highlight the state matches.
Okay. Let's do a partner update. Federal Highways, ODOT, WashDOT. Any comments, any updates? Rob, anything?
Just to clarify a little bit on the lottery thing, you should be able to invoice back to April 1st.
Oh, okay. That's even better.
If that matters. There is still a question about whether these specific types of funds can be used to pay overhead. If you ever did that you were doing that separate, trying to figure that out. So I don't know that answer yet. And then the third thing is that I don't have a good answer yet. There's about $10,000 in charges that ODOT has to set up the OTIB loan that you guys didn't end up using, I guess. And normally they recoup those charges as a fee on when you draw money. So they're trying to figure out if they can take the 10,000 or whatever it is off the lottery funds, just for transparency.
Yeah. I think that's something they told us when we were pursuing the OTIB.
Yeah. So, and then, so personnel wise, it's going to be dicey for months. I do know that the person that we have an agreement that you guys are working on for ODOT's charges, that person is no longer here or will no longer be here, but somebody else will be assigned. That's all I can say for sure. So
I'm glad you're here, Rob.
me too. For now, as far as I know, they're talking about a second round, maybe if they don't do a special session. So who knows?
Thank you, Rob. Other partner input? Seeing none, we'll keep going. Consent agenda, invoice approval. Mike?
They're in your packet, I guess.
I would suggest we ask for a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Passes. Thank you. Committee report, funding and finance, grant.
Ben's got it this time. Thanks, Ben.
Okay.
Yeah. We met last Thursday, and Clear Trail presented. So they're our auditor. So they'll go through and together do our single audit, and it sounds like they'll have some engagement with the commissioners because this group is so involved in the operation of the entity, and then we heard from the BIP team on the kind of what Mike was talking about with how we're going to stay highly rated in the new application. It's an impressive presentation, and it was good to hear that, and encouraged about kind of where that application stands. And there's also something that wasn't mentioned is that the first round of BIP is still open, so there'll be some crossover. So there's potentially that as another source of funding that could, conceivably come through. We covered Washington funding as well. Covered TIFIA and the raise in the cap, and that really shouldn't impact this group. We're going to be more constrained from a what we can afford to pay in payments than, what the law allows us to cover. So we're still looking at 105 as our maximum theoretical cap for TIFIA financing. And then we're expecting to see new packages in from Kiewit, HNTB, in the coming month. And then the Hood River County bond fees, that is settled. They're absorbing those. Is that right? And then sounds like there was, we discussed cash flow as well. We didn't cover it in depth, but with infra coming through it, that would kind of close all of the holes that we potentially have in cash flow financing, through
To the end of the design.
Clarification there, you're talking during engineering, we don't have a cash flow refunding gap. It's really going to be, we can use the reserve that we're getting off of the tolls to be able to pay that cost of cash, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But we still got the big problem when we go into construction that we got to figure out.
Have we approved as an authority the use of the reserve fund for cash flow prior to TIFIA? Is that still an open item?
Good question. Sounds like an action review.
I remember it came up. I can't remember the resolution.
I don't remember what the resolution was either.
Yeah.
We did, we approved it. It was already a resolution and we all voted to allow that to be a use.
Yeah.
We did do that.
Okay.
Anything else?
I have a question for the TIFIA back timing from now that we have gotten some of the news around our state funding successes. What does that projected timeline look like of when we'll recharge that process to sync up with getting those funds activated when we need to?
Yeah, most likely we won't reactivate that until we know we have full funding for construction, because they will be the last money in. And until we know that more definitively of when we're going to start construction, we wouldn't start that back up.
Well, my recall was our desire is that it's last money in, but there's also a scenario where we'll need to get that money in order to get the true last money that might come through a federal award. So are we monitoring what that
TIFIA has
timing is going to be?
You have to be fully funded for construction before you can start back up your TIFIA process. And then you can access your TIFIA money quicker, but they won't sign off on your TIFIA loan until you have all your funding, I'll call it
other funding,
to the project. So until your construction is fully funded, then they'll allow you to sign the TIFIA loan, and then you can decide when you want to spend those loans. So we may use them earlier, but we won't be able to sign for them until we have all the funding in place. Does that make sense?
Well, I think maybe what we're getting at is if we want to go to construction now, October 27, and luck would have it, we hit the funding on the BIP this first time for the full 532. We're fully funded. How long do we need to get the TIFIA in place? So if we had to access it in October 27, it would
take about a year to get the rest of the process done.
Okay.
So, and we've said that there's a couple of reasons we've said we need to know our full funding is in place about a year before we start construction. Part of it is we got to get put on the STIP and get through the STIP process, get us added for that. It's also closing out the TIFIA, making sure that's all closed out. And then getting the rest of the funding secured and agreements signed and everything from the time that you've seen with infra.
Well, that's
time you're actually awarded until you actually get the money.
It can take years to actually receive it. So, and then the other question I had, just knowing now, again, it's nice that we have money coming in and committed, but is there a one pager or a cheat sheet being worked on so that we're also keeping ourselves honest about what funds are going to expire at a certain threshold and how we're scheduling them?
Yeah.
And then also it's been mentioned, and how are we tracking that we aren't top heavy on this project and have found ourselves with too much design funds and find ourselves not out in front of correctly getting that assigned over to construction so that we're not spending unnecessary money just to be spending it in design.
Yep, so we have a tracking mechanism that talks about all the obligation dates, expiration dates, all those things that come with each grant agreement, which is either in the info, either in the award letters or in the actual agreement language. So we're tracking all of that. You do have a concern, I think I've mentioned this before, with infra, because infra we've split between 75 and 125.
Yeah.
Your 125 has an expiration right now, or an obligation, I'll call it expiration date of 27. So if we don't go to construction by that October 27 date, we're gonna have to start having conversations about whether we can extend that obligation date. Or we have potential to lose the infra funds. So that is something over the next year and a half or 2 years, we're gonna have to watch and see how things evolve. So yes, we have the whole tracking of those and we keep track of what's expiring when.
And just to clarify, because we broached that subject and that concern. And FHWA's recommendation was, yes, let's get the infra approved and then we'll start.
And then we'll
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then just the administration of all these different funds that are coming in and all the reporting required. What is the balance split there of what's being handled by HNTV staff versus contracted through Port of Hood River? And is that shifting?
We are doing almost all of it. The port cuts the checks and they monitor what we do, because like for ARPA, the port still owns that grant. But for all the other grants, then Debbie is our agency person that's involved, but Andrew Gong is the one tracking all of it. He's got a big massive spreadsheet that shows you where every invoice, so it's a collaboration between the two. So we get the invoices from them when they paid them, from Debbie and them, and then we track it, because when it gets paid versus how it gets wrapped up in the submittal for the reimbursement, there's different dates there that you have to use. One goes by when it was actually when it was actually invoiced, and one is when it was actually paid. So that's all tracked, and there's a big massive spreadsheet that tracks every invoice and what grant it went to. And then we have reporting with every agency on reporting, what invoices went in, what we're submitting for the quarter. So every quarter we submit something to all the grant holders on reporting structure, and all in preparation of an audit, because they will literally track every penny. So there's a whole process for all that. And we're happy to go through it with you. It's huge and it's a lot of effort to track all those grants.
So the other thing, both your financial reports get submitted and reviewed by the Budget and Finance Committee as well as the Engineering Committee.
And all the grant agencies review them. So like when we submit them, WashDOT has a person that goes through every grant invoice and application. ODOT does the same thing, and FHWA does the same thing. They all review them pretty heavily whenever we do. We've got checklists and processes for what to check for, because even if it's a penny off, we track pennies.
Yeah.
So, it's a big process to do.
It's time intensive.
It's we'd love to trade it all for one big grant that would only one person. If we could, that would save a lot of time.
If we could, let's keep going. Anything else from Planning and Finance?
Miss anything, Grant?
No, thanks, Ben.
Okay, thanks. Let's move to Engineering Construction. Eric? Or whether your turn this time?
I think it might be my turn.
Okay.
We spent quite a bit of time on the BIP grant, all the different shifts in that. In all sincerity, we think we spent an hour and 15 minutes of our 2-hour meeting. So majority of the time was on that and asking and going, really diving down into the new benefit cost ratio. We also spent quite a bit of time on the 2 Kiewit invoices that we just approved, because there was 2, and we went through the checklist again, Marla, and making sure that everybody, like, who's checking for what at what point. And so we went through that whole thing quite a bit. And then we talked a lot about the B&O tax again.
Business
We talked about an improvement process on that.
Correct.
Its invoices were 5 months aging.
Yeah.
And that's because we're not able to get all of them
Pennies.
done the way the pennies accounted for, the way WashDOT and ODOT need it. So we've talked about developing a kind of a
training and a checklist with you
Yeah.
to walk through.
So that we don't have that problem.
Going into 1B, because it's going to be, why repeat the same mistakes that you have in 1A and everyone's wasting, we're paying for the hours. So let's make sure it's done correctly for 1A. And then that's really what we're talking, I mean.
Then it goes exponentially up when you get to 2.
Section, yeah. So we're trying to make sure that that's all done, but it wasn't a very exciting meeting, but it was, we got a lot of work done. Any meeting with Mr. Fox is exciting, but a lot of work was done this time, not a lot of topics.
Okay, communications?
I will get off and then Jake, if you want to add anything before Noah jumps in. So basically for the group, I would say right now, the way we are looking at any funded communication efforts is in support of the BIP application, because without securing that funding, this project looks very different going forward. So if there are other things coming up through your committees or that you believe need communication support, we need to know that. I would say from this meeting, I think I am taking back that we do want to do some outreach around 6F and that it would be beneficial. Figuring out how we support that public involvement, since we don't really have dedicated PI support on this project, will be another element there. But also, just so you're aware, we are still in the funded work for the RAISE grant. Jake can probably add any relevant updates there, but that has public involvement planned and scheduled for some open houses later. And again, that is all work with local agencies around that bike ped network. So the communications committee for the authority is really focused on all hands on deck towards the BIP application, primarily for 2026. So what that has meant is that MSH, who came on board, has kind of done a review of how we talk about the project and what are those priorities that we're emphasizing. And they have done some work and they're going to present that to you. That is trying to clean up. I mean, I don't think there's anything new. We all know why this bridge is important and how we've been talking about it, but we are trying to get disciplined around the phrases and the areas of focus for when we are messaging about the bridge, whether that's to our federal delegation or people in the community, so that we are consistent and it's tracking with what we're emphasizing in that application. I will say also, I know we sent an email last week when we were planning to do the news and how we were going to amplify the funding received through Oregon. And I think getting to some more frequent email communication just among the group, I don't think we need to stay a structure that we only get updates here. So we're looking to activate that. We're also fine tuning a responsibility list of who is doing what, if they're contracted to support communications for this project. And that also means that we're planning to shift our monthly committee meeting to the end of a month so that that meeting is really prioritizing, bless you, the green lighting of whatever work will be getting done in that upcoming month. And Dan is working sort of on a long-term look so that we're not just 30 days out, but we're trying to put some more checks and balances in there just of accountability of where energy is being spent. And all of that also being reflected by feedback we're getting. If there's something, churning in a different committee that we aren't aware of that might need some support, just to make sure the public is informed properly. So in addition to the message house that Noah's going to share, that those updated messages will be seen across the website with some updates that are underway there, and in some updates of deliverables that we're working on this summer in preparation, mainly for the visit in DC later this fall, but also just to be used across the board. So a new funding infographic, revisiting some of the video content that we have, and some new messages that can be out there.
Comments, questions? Yes.
Do you believe that the public generally understands that we are in a position now to go forward into the design phase, and that the design phase will take, roughly what are saying, a year and a half?
I mean, I still think there's just a big, which I think we all have seen, gap on people's general awareness about the project. So we are also looking, and I think we mentioned it in that email, it's underway now, but reviving those newsletters that used to go out. I think we should also consider some of the things the port used to do that I think were helpful in terms of hard signage around town where we shared those updates. But no, I mean, I think there's always going to be room for improvement. No matter how much messaging we're doing, there's going to be someone that's not paying attention to the channel that we're accessing. And so the other thing we've talked about is coming back to the commissioners or activating us to step in and fill some of those gaps at the farmers market and festivals, and kind of having that road kit of material that any of us who may want to take a Saturday or Tuesday and be present and be that face, because I think some of it too is about people in the community knowing who they can go to and ask questions about. And I think, making sure that we have awareness about, there's 12 of us that also are serving on this. So yeah, I mean, I think we still see newspaper articles that incorrectly report on the bridge ownership or oversight. So I think that's ongoing, the awareness around this authority, what we're tasked with, what we're doing.
And I think that's correct. And there are some issues that in my mind are superfluous, like trying to get everybody corrected on what the port's responsible and what the bridge authority. It would be nice if everybody understood that, but at the end of the day, it's not gonna really matter. I think that the issues about the timing and the funding, just listening to the discussion about people looking for a way to volunteer, it would be great if we had a couple volunteers that could help set up a table and people could be at the farmer's market or something like that. And that would be I think that would be an easy thing to just spread some of that information in the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think our mindset really is, our job is to secure the funding. And we know there is necessary advocacy and information building that needs to be focusing on that audience and those decision makers. We could bat 100 and have everyone in town be able to perfectly repeat our talking points. But if we don't get the funding, it's a failure. It's also a communication failure. And so I think trying to balance too, when we are talking about contracted support, because this project is spending money now and has been, and how do we use that to the best ability to achieve the real goal that delivers what we're here to do, which is build that bridge. And so I'm not trying to say that I agree with you. I think where we can be doing more free cost is being at farmers markets, being out in the community. We are carriers of that message. And I think that's also, NOAA's aim in getting kind of a cleaned up deck that we can all have, so that there's hopefully more of a comfort level. Like, well, if I'm going to go sit in the park for 2 hours and people ask questions, I know what I know from being in the meetings, but what are the things we're trying to really reinforce? So if people want to send that letter or reach out to their, electeds offices during this period when we're really trying to get our project to have greater awareness.
I'm just thinking about my dog walk pitch where, every day when I'm walking my dog, someone asks me a question about the bridge and I have a pretty quick set of things I throw out, but I'm not sure we're all saying the same things.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they're pretty close, but.
The elevator speech.
Dog walk. We don't have elevators in Hood River. Where's the second floor?
We got the stairs.
I think the biggest comment that I've heard from the community is that they don't understand why we haven't already started construction. And so just trying to educate somebody on how many steps it takes to actually get to construction has been eye-opening, I think, for the community, honestly. I've spoken to Amanda quite a bit, and her questions are, there's still a lot of old information. Like, she just recently realized that the bridge was $1.12 billion as opposed to 520 million. And so I don't necessarily get into a back and forth on Facebook saying, no, your numbers are wrong, this is what it actually is. I like to do the face-to-face kind of telephone call. And so, question to you, is there a better way that we as commissioners can engage on social media? Do you want us to correct information on social media, or do you want it should come from the bridge, or what is your recommendation?
I mean, look, we're all our own individuals. And so I don't think we've ever tried to take a tact of, no, you cannot, in your capacity as Catherine Thomas, weigh in if you see a conversation thread. But I think what we have tried to maintain, which is consistent with many agencies, is that we're not monitoring or getting into different groups that the public might start or that people might start and policing any inaccuracies. That's failing the public. Like, that is money being spent for someone on a communications staff to chase every comment. And we are letting them down because the target our eyes should be on is we've got to get this funding. And people will never grasp how long these projects take. I mean, I have half my town on boil water because a booster pump pressure system that's going into construction this year and has been planned since 2020 is now breaking ground. And there's other layers and complexity there. but what people know is what's in front of them. And so the best thing we can do is keep moving and get the funding. So in 2027, they see the shovels in the ground. That doesn't mean I'm dismissing that we need to update our website. And there's certainly good work we can be doing that's going to be getting done to update the materials that we have accessible. So if you do want to comment, you kind of have your suite of documents to be able to provide information and stay in a lane that feels correct and not over promising or under delivering. But I think that we're letting the public down if every time someone wants to get involved, but their knowledge gap, it's the first time they're deciding to engage. If we redirect funded time and energy, like that is where we can be participants. And that is who should be engaging. I think it's just about leaning on the right channels. We're also working on who's monitoring the social media. I mean, again, some of what we're seeing is the gap of 6 months without support on public involvement, where the Facebook page was being monitored and there was vetting that happened so that we were responding to comments on that agency, and we should do that. But getting into where people might send information and what they might be saying, I think is just a rabbit hole that.
I like to change this subject just a little bit. If you take a look at what are the major messages that we need to be thinking about for the next 6 months, and what I see, and to scratch the itch for the people that, hey, why aren't you out there building something?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, we need to identify a few areas that we can actually show visible progress. And Mike, the one that comes to my mind, there's two of them. One is getting the instruments put on the old bridge to be able to look at various responses that we see. That's a big one, and that's supposed to be going here shortly. To me, we ought to be able to communicate to the group, to the community. We are pushing out. We are making progress. We're using this information in the design process for the bridge. And you can take some pictures, and here's some folks actually putting stuff on the bridge, number one. Number two, we're about to launch off and do some more geotechnical work, right? So when we're out there with a barge and a drill, we got to be taking pictures of that and getting some community involvement stories put together on that. And why are we doing it when we did it a couple of years ago? Why do we need to do it again? Well, there's a good reason for it, and it's showing progress.
So I think this is also about the interplay of the authority and how we're working together. Because I would use as a case study the instrument recording systems that are on that bridge. It seemed once that came to the full body as an update before the subsequent meeting where there was something, an action taken, there was knowledge and awareness that that was being worked on. And so when we have that information early, it means that the day that action's taken, we can post that release that's already been written and worked through with the technicalities, and it's there the same day. It feels immediate. We can be working to say, hey, can we get some images from the firm that's placing these instruments so we can contract that? I think where we continue to find ourselves is in a reflexive, reactive place where and that's more my point about how we, as the committees, the communications committee is only as good as the information we're getting. So when something's getting worked on, hey, geotechnical work is going to happen. Hearing that, so we're planning and saying, okay, let's activate video, let's activate images. Let's make sure that when it's happening, it feels immediate. Right now, things are still on these delays. Like that can be in the newsletter that we're working on. But I think, when you see those types of communications done effectively, it's because the whole machine is working in sync. And it feels sometimes like we're still, for the needs of what a communications group has, we need the information early. So while a team is working on it, if we can just have awareness that that's coming down the pipe, then we're activating a month ahead the time that needs to get spent, or getting underneath the hood the information to draft that release or work on, how we want that to go out in the community same day. Because we don't have, the other thing that we're never going to be able to control is the nature that we're rural communities. So we do not have 3 local news affiliates broadcasting the news of Hood River and White Salmon. We have the Portland market. We don't have daily newspapers. We have local radio, but who's listening to that? And so I think it's trying also to be as buttoned up as we can and out in front of our own stories. And sometimes I think we're still not in front of our own
So
stories.
I want to applaud what you did a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where you put that list out that says, okay, here's a forward look from communications. Here's what you see happening in the little bit. Personally, what I'd love to see is that we all use that to identify what's missing on that list. What are the big hitters that are coming maybe two months down the road or 3 months down the road? And maybe we take a 5 minutes in this room when we have our meeting here to take a quick picture of where we are in that 3-month look ahead. And is there anything anybody can think of that could impact us? And we ought to get it on that list. And then
Yeah, I
if we
think-
need to follow up, we follow up.
I think that's about also the committees, you guys are working on things. We don't have eyes into that. And this has been a refrain for quite some time, but it's like when that first meeting where you're touching, wow, we might we're going to engage Porterhood River about putting some instruments on the bridge. People will be curious. There's a communication component there. Flag that. So yes, if you're saying that what will trigger the committees to think in that way is us generating an email where we're saying after our meeting, here's our work plan, and that we know that the North Star continues to be, if we are successful, it's about getting the full funding. So that will drive a lot of the communications focus. But absolutely, if that's how we can get that input, that's what we want and need, is just, if there's the Funding and Finance Committee picks up on that TIFIA work, that's a great opportunity to re-educate about how that home stretch of funding is, what people have been paying into through their tolls. And
I would make a suggestion that we create a little bit of space in this meeting, that every meeting we spend a couple minutes, show that slide up on the table, and we just as a group look at it and say, yeah, this is cool, this is fine. Is there anything new that's out there in the brush that we see could be a benefit? And it just forces all the committees to think together in a focused manner.
So what I've spent more of my time communicating isn't details about this is happening, that's happening. It's more what's known and what's not knowable, and why is this complex? And just last night, I was on the phone with someone who was asking me, it's like, are all bridges this hard? And I said, well, this is a mile-long bridge over a river that carries major commerce and multiple endangered species. It's not going to be easy. And it's that sort of discussion, I think, that's almost more helpful than telling someone, hey, we're going to be putting a sensor on the bridge so we know if the pillars are shaking as traffic goes by or whatever. I just feel like it's the more we communicate to people what the nature of the project is, the more we do.
In my opinion, I think it's part of it, and it's a big part of it. But on every other project I've been on, you got to show the public that you're making progress.
But only if you're making progress.
Well, only if we're making progress.
yeah, I think what we're trying to balance too is we are only building a bridge when we get the full amount of funding.
Right.
So what is the responsible, fiscally appropriate way to be managing the project when we don't have all that money? And so how much time and energy are we spending with contracted support to focus on the areas of information and outreach and engagement that are going to get us closer to that goal? Because if long-term, rightly, the community should be looking with intention and specificity around every dollar that was spent. If this is a project that's going to hit a hard stop because we have to wait and pursue additional future funding rounds. And so I would say that's top of mind to me, is that we're also trying to sit here and be mindful about what are the key communication targets. And I do think we can tell the story about getting that funding while also achieving the goal of the big picture updates for people about why this is taking so long, that we are actively doing it. And, I think some of that is also out of the communication space and more in just the day-to-day operations administration of this authority. How do we get the notices and awareness out about our meetings when they're occurring? Do we want to think about how we shift the location or this room or the setup so that we are inviting the public to attend? And we've raised that in the past. An afternoon workday meeting is never going to draw members of the public, even if it's 6F. People have jobs, people have time. And, I think that's there's, that governance committee could touch that, you know, like, I think there's a lane that is also more broadly about all of us thinking about how we are presenting this project and where it is, and thinking ahead to different scenarios of where the project may be in 2 years.
So amplifying what you just said, the dog walking question that I get is, why are we spending tens of millions of dollars on the design when we don't have money to build a bridge? And so, you know, you and I both have experience in doing large projects, and we know how this works, and we can give examples and describe why it makes sense to be in a position that when money does become available, that you are ready to go. But again, that's not an obvious thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that has to be said. And the more of us that are capable of doing that, the better the public understands where we are.
Yeah, and that's where I think too, we can revisit just some of that traditional public information that has dropped off on this project in the last, you know, since we lost the sub that was focused on public involvement. And so, you know, I think that we're all seeming to be in agreement that there's a desire that that support is valued, and how do we figure a way to support that? And I think some of it doesn't need to be a cost. It is about us, you know, potentially organizing better around having a presence at different things and knowing what we're saying and how we're at a high level explaining to people where we are in the project and what's going on.
Okay, I think we beat that one for a bit.
Let's haven't gotten to
Noah.
part of this, which is,
So now if you want to know the messages.
we probably should finish that part.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to launch into it. I just wanted to be mindful. Marla, I think you said if Jake wanted to say something, just in case he does.
He's still on?
Jake,
I think we-
He is.
Okay.
I've got nothing to say really.
Well, that's fine. Just wanted to give you a second. I will try to keep this pretty brief because I know it's a busy meeting. But I'm hoping that a lot of the things that you all were just talking about are addressed or touched on in this presentation. I'll be doing the first few slides, and Roy will take us down the specific messages towards the end. I think I would recommend maybe that ask people to write down questions about the messaging, and then we'll take all the questions at the end, just because some of it might be addressed in later slides. If you absolutely have to ask, that's totally fine. And I think just to start off from the beginning, why are we addressing the messages and the project narrative? Again, at this phase, and I think we came in on the project and we're pretty fortunate where there's good solid messaging, there's a nice website, there's a lot of assets, nice video assets, and we jumped in the middle of a time when there was terrific success. We were able to help with the press releases on Washington and Oregon funding, and so it's a luxury to come into a project at a time like this, and we've had great collaboration with the GR and Communications Committee. So, things are going pretty well. That said, there are some significant changes on the project. And if you go back and review the messaging as we have, if you read through the website, you'll begin to notice that I think there are a few things that look a little off. One is that the administration has changed and the messaging has changed. And some of the stuff just seems a little off in terms of alignment. The second is we're heading into a different phase of the project, which requires a different framing and maybe some different messages. I can't remember what the third is, but those were my two most important ones. So we wanted to go over it. I will say that in the near term, we've been working with Dan to go over the website and just make sure that everything is factually correct, that we've changed it to 1.2 billion everywhere, that we've said that Oregon matched Washington's funding. So I think that just factually speaking, the website is fine, but is it really driving home the messages that we want? Is it keeping us all on the same page as was talked about earlier? So let me see, is this working? Yeah. So just to give you an overview of what we're going to show you here, just going to introduce you to the tagline and subheader that we're proposing. And then we're going to go into the audience identification and priorities for those audiences. And the messaging objectives, but basically, why did we land on those kinds of messages? And then we'll have a chance to look at the tagline again to see how that comes together. And then we have our three core areas for messaging around the project. That's what we call a message house. So you have the top line message and then the three main messages. And then we can talk a little bit about how those will be used going forward. So that's the framing of this very short presentation. So what we're proposing as a tagline is a bridge we can rely on, connecting growing families and businesses across the Columbia River Gorge. And as I said, we'll come back to that in a second. But there are a couple of things that we just wanted to go into as to why we landed on this framing. One is that we did some really good work with the GR Communications Committee around, and I think Marlo is doing a good job explaining this, and I agree completely that our number one target audience is federal funders. That does not mean that's our only audience by any stretch of the imagination, but everything that we say, post, put on the website should work for federal funders at the highest level. This project will succeed or fail on a bunch of things, from infra to BIF to TIFIA, on whether this is delivering on what their priorities are. And then we of significant importance as well are the continued confidence of Oregon and Washington legislators and the transportation leadership community, and then the communities in which you live, which we've been talking about now. And just acknowledging also that there are a number of other audiences that we care about, but it's kind of a pyramid. Like at the top, everything has to work for federal funders, and then we can tailor these audiences more specifically as we need to talk to CRIPFIC or the communities in White Salmon at the farmers market or what have you. So that's the audience analysis. And then when you look at if the federal funders are our number one priority, what do they want to hear? What do they care about? And I really want to give a shout out here to Summit. We met with them earlier. They reviewed our current messaging and we talked about future messaging, and they gave us really clear direction. I mean, they said, first of all, this current iteration of USDOT does not want to hear anything poetic, anything particularly flowery or visionary. They want to hear hardcore, what does this do for their priorities? And those are safety, families, rural economies, and innovation, specifically as it relates to cost savings. How quickly can we get these projects out the door? How much money can we save by doing that? So as we're developing the messages, we want to make sure we're hitting on those top federal priorities all the time. And in addition to that, we want to think about our objectives. And I think this first bullet is something that I think was coming out of that conversation earlier, which is we need to convey a feeling of growing momentum. And just to name it, people want to join a winner. They want to be on the winning side. So they want to know that if they've funded this project, if they've stood by it in the community, if they've that this is something that is actually moving forward and happening. And the good news is I think we have a lot of material to back that up. We want to make sure that, and this was something I think we really wanted to emphasize from some of the current messaging, in order to nail the benefits piece for the federal audience, we want to make sure that we emphasize how this is supporting the broader economy. So in a sense, the we in this, a bridge we can rely on is not only the local communities, but the entire broader economy of the Pacific Northwest and the country. This is really a project of national significance. And as we were really diving into it with folks in Hood River and White Salmon in the region, and also, to be honest, watching the wildfires and reading all the materials, the number one through line across all the messages is really reliability. That's reliability in a crisis, reliability in getting to work, reliability picking up your kids so you don't have to take a detour, all the different ways that this community and the users of the bridge rely on this bridge to get where they need to go and do what they need to do. That's at the core of this. And finally, we just wanted to make sure that everybody who opens a web page, looks at a one-pager, knows where the heck we're talking about. Because if our primary audience is the federal funders, we want them to have a sense of where is this and why does it matter. So that's the thinking behind how we arrived at the top line messages and the subhead, which is kind of the next most important line. So we talk about a bridge we can rely on. That's that reliability factor. And that we is defined very broadly in this case. It's not our local communities only. It's everybody that depends on this bridge. And in fact, you know, the country, the region of the Pacific Northwest region in the country really needs to get this bridge done. And then as we illustrate the bridge a little bit more, we talk about the growing families and businesses, which are federal priorities, and the location across the Columbia River Gorge. So that's where we landed on the top line messages. I'm going to hand it over to Roy just to talk about our three top messages. We'll keep this pretty short and leave some time for questions.
Thanks, Noah. Everyone can hear me, I hope. Okay, so message one, momentum, as Noah set up well and has been touched on. This is the first most important message we're trying to convey, and the wording here is important. The bridge replacement project is on track and moving forward with demonstrated support and investment from federal, state, and local partners. And thanks to our partners in Washington and Oregon and the recent news from the federal government as well, we actually have strong evidence to support the case for momentum, but it's not enough to just have the momentum. You have to tell people that you have the momentum, and this is what it looks like. So to Noah's point about being part of a winning team in a project that is moving forward, this is the most important message. Let's go to number 2. Thanks, Noah. Number 2 is the economy. The new bridge will secure a vital link connecting the farms and factories of the Pacific Northwest to global supply chains. Again, this is a message crafted to locate the project nationally for a federal audience, but also to speak to our audiences in Oregon and Washington, and recognizing the economic importance of a reliable crossing. And then number 3 is safety, built to 21st century standards. A new bridge will keep our communities connected and protected. And I want to thank Marla specifically for that eloquent way of phrasing that last piece. So, you know, these are the 3 legs of the stool. These are the, you know, momentum, economy, safety. This is the story we can tell and locate it. And I want to say, you know, these are the core supporting messages. There are lots and lots of supporting facts. There are lots of examples that can support each of these, and that is part of the work that we're going to continue to do, going out and finding stories of folks who have been impacted in their business life or in their personal life by delays or closures of the existing bridge, or looking at opportunities to grow their businesses and grow their families because they can have a crossing they rely on. That all comes next, but first we want to make sure everyone understands this is the structure. And I think, Noah, I'm handing it back to you.
Yeah, just on that last point, I just wanted to clarify, we're giving you the top level of the architecture for each of these 3 messages. If you're wondering, where is seismic, or where is barge traffic, or where is, you know, small business, there's a level down under this of each one of these has 3 supporting messages, and that's in the communications playbook that we hope to train all of you on to be able to talk to that dog part person or regional media if they're looking for comment on what's happening, so that we can all be working from the same core messages. And all of those are available on the SharePoint. We can provide the links if you're interested in tracking the development of these messages. And so where do we go next? You know, we really have some urgency around developing materials as soon as possible to support outreach this summer. A trip to DC in September in support of the BIP, and many of the things that you all were just talking about. So these messages can be quickly shifted into an updated FAQ, one-pagers, presentation decks, talking points for all of you. We're going to propose updating the website to the extent that is necessary, not just for the sake of updating it, but to make sure that it's delivering the clearest possible message. And also to use it to be ready, we want to have prepackaged statements and protocols in the event of crisis scenarios, which we're preparing at the moment. And again, we'd like to have the opportunity, you know, at least for those of you who are really interested in being public representatives, to walk through this and do some training together. So that's our deck. I can come back to it if you have questions about specific slides, but want to leave you with time.
I have just one thing. The economic slide, I think slide number 3, you have a pair on that. I keep reminding people, basically I replace the pair with a drone or something. You know, we keep pretending that we have an agricultural economy when we don't. Well, the numbers show that we don't. It's nothing near that. I don't know why we keep perpetuating the agricultural economy.
Well, I will say, I'm happy to replace icons. At this point, I've just kind of been pulling from what exists. So if we have additional things we want to show graphically, I think that's great. I will emphasize that rural economies plays very well right now at the federal level. So, maybe statistically, it's not the largest number, but it's definitely part of the character of the region. So I don't want to tell you if we should or shouldn't say it, but I could say it could be useful if we do want to say it.
I think national defense probably plays pretty well also.
Yeah.
The comments, questions, guys?
Drone and a pair.
They're Joan carrying it.
Okay, let's keep moving. I believe we need to get into new business. We've got an action item. It's the Northwest Waterway Association. Mike, you wanna?
Yeah, so Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, PNWA, so I don't have to say that anymore. I think you guys are all familiar with them. The port was a member for a long time. I think a few years ago, they redid their fee structure based on the revenue that was coming in, and it was really high. When the authority was created, they kind of lumped us into that. Dan knows a few of those folks, has recently been talking to them and explained our situation, and they were willing to drop our fee from what I think was $20-some thousand down to $2,500 for a year. They do offer a lot of good federal proactive or lobbyists and I think support project, as well as opportunities for us to go to events and things that they hold where there's other people at that we could communicate with. So this is just something for you all to consider, whether it's worth it or not to become a member of their organization. They do, like I said, a lot of advocacy at the federal level. So just wanted to put this in front of you to see if it was something you were interested in. If you were, then we'll move forward with
So when you say advocacy at the federal level, the advocacy for what?
for a project.
The advocacy is for ports. It's for.
They also have project specific pages and transportation that they also support. So I think they can also, they do a web page, like IBR is on their web page as far as their projects they support. So I think they bring that messaging. Again, just something for you all to consider. I had a link to their website. I think
The committee had a presentation made to us.
they had a discussion with them.
Frankly, I was against it. I was one that voted at the port to drop them because I didn't see a lot of value that we're getting for $25,000. But what changed my mind at $2,500 was that they give us access and support through the bridge, large shippers up and down the river that I think could help us with support letters and so on. And they do have a pretty strong organization back in DC, and it appears that they carry some weight back there. So for $2,500 investment, maybe it's worth it for at least a year to see.
So the recommendation is the committee, engineering construction committee is recommending this for staff.
I was not a part of the meeting.
I would say staff is right now. If other committees want a briefing or meet with.
No, I was just trying to understand, like, it's on our agenda because it seems like it's recommended.
I think it was a staff recommendation is what I would call it. We've briefed the engineering committee on what they do. If the other committees would like more information or sit down and talk with them, they'd be happy to talk with us.
I'll make a motion to join the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association for annual membership dues of $2,500.
I guess I can second it, right? I'll second it.
So for discussion, I would just like to say I was instrumental in writing the bylaws for their new organization when they had a change in command, if you will, and the new pricing structure was very clear. So it's very nice to hear the discount. Also disclosure, I was not a part of the meeting. The only caution I would say is Their advocacy is very much agriculture and very specific to wheat growers and that kind of thing. I think if we wanted to get a pilot's letter, we could just go talk to the Pilot Association. I don't think we necessarily need to be part of PNWA to have that meeting. Do you know Kate pretty well? So I just say, I know $2,500 doesn't sound like a lot of money when you're on a $1.12 billion project. However, I just don't know if the benefit would be there. Again, I wasn't on the meeting. My firm left PNWA for other reasons, but it is a very discounted rate for us for 1 year, which is very interesting. But you have to give to get, right? So you have to show up to the PNW meetings to actually get something out of the PNW meetings. They're not just gonna blanket you in, if you don't, just because you paid dues. So we would have to become advocates and really look at what their meeting schedule is like and what their conference schedule is like and make sure we're part of it to get the full bang for our buck.
Is the Port Commission still part of it?
The port is no longer part of PNWA.
Port Rivers now.
We dropped out a couple of years ago.
But staff feels like this membership at 2,500 could be beneficial for the upcoming rounds of funding we're seeking and getting that advocacy or letter of support from that association.
I think it would be. But again, it's
I would look at this as a 1-year commitment.
And there's no guarantee of future years. I mean, it's a matter of, is it worth the investment this year at a critical time when we need all the federal support that we can get? We leverage.
I would say there's 4,500 in billable hours in attendance per meeting that go 3 hours. So if I'm weighing it against that, it's not a cost that doesn't seem like, if they're willing to reduce the share and it's advocacy that could be in support or benefit of our project, it seems worth considering.
And I would say that if we are a member, we reach out to them, and if they're doing any advocacy in DC, maybe we join them or go with them or make sure that they have our fact sheet and they're,
And you have to pay to play. So we'd have to show up. You'd have to go, you have to pay the fee. You have to,
This is the beginning.
This is like this is the step to maybe get in the door, but you still have to pay to get to the door.
I just got
Maybe
who's
it's
going to
not.
be going to the meetings, who's going to be tracking what they're doing, who's going to be doing the homework and telling along with them and making the arguments and doing the advocacy so that we get the advocacy.
Yeah. Right. So
I think that's something that you have
The advocacy what we need is for about the next 6 months. And if we don't get it by then, we don't have the funding anyway.
So they have a winter conference coming up. Are we going? They have the DC trip coming up. Are we planning to send people then too?
I'd be happy to go to their meetings this year and put out the effort to go. And
I don't think we expend significant resources. And so if this is a membership that will do nothing other than in name only, and additional resources and costs will need to be incurred to secure a letter of support, then that's certainly something to be weighing.
When I first came on, I know the port, they had the port do at least once, maybe twice. We did project updates at their conferences.
On this project.
So I would suggest that we try to do that again, maybe at their winter conference, or even if they would let us at DC to talk about whether it's progressive design build or a all new authority doing it, whatever we can do to be on that and get as much exposure as we can through this, because they have a lot of members and I imagine a lot of connections show up at that, the Coast Guard's there and others that we could connect with and meet with. So I think this is an organization that you could be involved in at least for the next year actively. And,
Can we ask if DOT is still engaged? Are agencies still engaged? Because it would be great to show up to a conference and it's all consultants.
Well, I guess, and we have a motion on the table, so I think it's what information is needed for people to decide on a vote. And also back to process, if this is on an agenda, I'm inferring it came from a committee where it was discussed and it's leaving that committee coming to us because the committee's deliberation determined this was of merit and there's a recommendation there. So I think from that committee, I would be interested in hearing, is that the case? And if our seatmates are saying that all things considered, this seems like it could be supportive.
So the executive director and I don't remember what her title was, but
Government relations, probably.
I think
Dina.
came out and they gave us a presentation and talked about what they do and their thing. And Catherine's exactly right. They primarily advocate for ports and shippers using the waterways in the Northwest. That's their kind of primary mission. So my kind of take on it was that if we engage this group and invest some time, that's got to be some, whether it's staff time or a commissioner time to actually attend some of these events. There are connections that can be made there. For example, when we were trying to research the bridge strike, there we ran around a couple times. I think if you're a member of this group and you know a couple shippers, you're going to have a name. You're going to be able to call and get connected with whoever it needs to be right off the bat. So I think there's some merit. Do they support our? Is there a direct correlation with us putting a bridge over the navigable waterway? It's not necessarily direct, but it's pretty symbiotic, I think, in terms of us being able to get our cars over the river safely and them being able to do their shipping under it safely. So
I think there is a direct connection, and the direct connection is the width of the channel. And we know that there's issues with the barges making turns. We know that barges bump up against the bridge. And when I presented to the PNWA, it went really well, and you make a lot of great connections. And I think it's a good investment.
Jake.
Jake Edwards, you've got your hand up.
I mean, this sounds pretty simple, but can we just ask them what exactly we get out of joining their organization?
We actually did.
Yeah.
And remind me, Mike, and as I remember, their advocacy was, you know, shipping stuff up and down that river underneath our bridge. And they could be helping with the signal back to DC that the bridge that we have now is the toughest position on the upper Columbia River for barge traffic making a shift and a turn and so on. And the new bridge will eliminate that issue. And they felt that they could get the barge folks to be strong supporters of us.
I think he said it was the second hardest, but he
Yeah.
talked about what
That's right.
first was.
He never said where that was, but it was apparently way upriver.
I always heard he left a mystery for us.
I could say something from the staff perspective here. So I'm familiar with PNWA. I've worked with them for years. In my former role in a congressional office, I was lobbied by PNWA. I've also represented clients who are members of PNWA, so I've lobbied with them and I've been lobbied by them. What I can say is that they are a very respected voice in Washington, D.C. So they were formed back in the 30s or 40s, I think, and their first major action was petitioning FDR to put in a navigation lock at Bonneville Dam. That established the organization. And since then, their mission has expanded. And so they represent, like folks have said, ports, other river users, both on the Pacific Northwest coast, and then also on the Columbia and Snake River systems. And so, sitting in those rooms in DC, I've been a part of their mission back to DC for another client. They bring in 15, 16 members of the congressional delegation from the House delegation from the Pacific Northwest. So they have access to folks on both sides of the aisle, good relationships on both sides of the aisle. Same thing in the 6 Pacific Northwest Senate offices. So they very much do have the ear of Congress, and they go and they speak. They speak on a number of different issues. Core to it is dredging, channel maintenance. They help make appropriations requests of the federal agencies. So they work with members of Congress who sit on appropriations to fund, harbor maintenance, dredging, et cetera. So they do have a pretty wide scope. They also have a very wide set of relationships. And from this one staffer's perspective, I think now is a good time to get involved with them, as our major funding request right now is happening at the federal level.
So I'm prepared to support it for 1 year. I would want to see something during that year. I am nervous about whether we'll be able to raise the interest among our group to actually leverage it, but I think it's worth a try.
Other discussion items on this? Comments? We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor of submitting our application to join Pacific Northwest Waterways Association? I was about to say something else.
Yeah.
So with that, if you're in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Let's move on to informational items and we'll try and.
Another action item. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
The second action item that Marla added.
Oh,
Additions. So as mentioned, I think by GR and also in the comms update, we are working to schedule a trip to DC to advocate once that BIP 2026 application is in place. And our current structure requires authority approval to make the travel arrangements. And so the communication GR committee is having a meeting later this week, but I thought it might make most sense to at least get the approval in place so that staff can be working and adjusting as needed around commissioner availability as we're trying to figure out those dates in September. So I would ask that we consider authorizing travel arrangements to be made for 2 commissioners, one from Oregon, one from Washington, and up to 2 staff members supporting the project to travel to DC for EIP 2026 advocacy.
I will second that.
question for you. Do we have the dates that you're looking at and how many days?
They're looking right now between the 14th and the 17th. I think that will get dialed in as we get some of the meetings, some initial requests for scheduling. We definitely talked a lot last week around prioritizing which agencies we think and which rooms we need to be in most critically. So I think those dates will probably get tightened.
Okay, so you're not asking for who's going to go, but just approval to make reservations and plans to go that, and you'll come back with a
that's all that's required, right?
Yeah, I think it also allows the flexibility if, if we decide on 2 commissioners and one commissioner is not going to be available, we don't need to come back to get a board action. Staff has the capability to just go to another Oregon or Washington commissioner and get the trip scheduled.
Okay.
So Commissioner Piper is volunteering.
Okay, so you seconded?
I seconded, yeah.
Okay. If we could, any other discussion on it? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes. Okay, let's go to informational items and we'll try and
Yeah, I'm gonna go
Mike,
through
keep
these
it
fairly
kind of short.
quickly, unless others have questions. So Kiewit Phase 1B, we're continuing to finish up that negotiations on the fee side. We're waiting on one pricing from a sub for geotech. As soon as we have that, we'll finalize that number. We're just waiting on them to give a price to Kiewit. And then on the contract terms, there's one remaining item that we need to finalize. We should get that finalized probably tomorrow. And then we will bring this back in a package with all the nice bows and ribbons on it for your next meeting on the 25th or 23rd. 28th, sorry.
So the intent on the 28th, you would bring us a package for final approval to proceed forward with Kiewit, or if that's your recommendation for Phase 1B.
Correct. And then also with a recommendation on when to give them a notice to proceed. And that will probably be contingent on us signing the infragrant agreement. On the rod, any questions on that one? Okay, on the rod.
I'll just, because I think there were a couple other pieces to that, just so people are aware. On the 1B, there are several allowances because we don't have hard numbers on it. And we're trying to preserve the option to add additional work if we need it. but save the money if we don't.
Mm.
So that's on geotech and
Temporary construction.
temporary
And
temporary construction.
the other thing, sorry, and I was gonna do that, let me add some other stuff into this. Couple other things that we're doing is that we also are not having Kiewit do any estimating on this one, like full estimating. Reason being is we're setting this up more like what a conventional bid build project where they're going to deliver a signed and sealed set of plans. And we've excluded out all of the not all, but most of the construction activities, the independent cost evaluations and all of that. Because we don't know if we're going to construction. So we've kind of said, okay, let's do the economical thing right now. Let's just design the project. If we find out we have full funding and that we are going to come to an agreement with Kiewit on a price, then we will come back and adjust some of those things depending on when that funding comes available. But we also want to, so what we'll be producing is basically an engineer's estimate. We'll be using KMC, who has a lot of construction background, as well as some input from Kiewit. But not to the extent that you would normally do in a progressive design build. We just thought that was the more cost-effective way to do it. We're also holding back on some of the early packaging. There's no early works or early packaging of anything, again, because we just don't know if we're going to construction, so we're holding back on some of that.
But again, if magic happens and all of a sudden we get full funding, then we throw that throttle forward and start it.
We would make some adjustments to that, to just so everybody's aware of that. But like an example, like on the geotech, the reason I'm really creating that kind of as a task order is when you get out there and start doing the borings, you don't know what you're going to hit. And if we see very good, consistent boring stuff, then you may not need to do as many. If you see inconsistencies, then you're probably going to want to do more, because that is a huge risk when you go into construction, is that variability and that what you can't see under the ground. So we will be proposing that. We also will have to extend, if you remember, the HTB contract or the owner's rep contract only goes through the end of 2026. Right now, the schedule for 1B is a 21-month schedule with about 3 months to work towards a construction agreement. So our contract will need to extend from December of 26 to September of 27 in order to allow us that full time to pursue those. We'll also be including things in that, like additional grant applications. That'll be kind of like, if you need it, we use it. If we don't, it's a pot of money that if we need it.
It'll be like the same reconciliation we did for planning and getting Kiewit on board for.
Correct. And that'll be coming to you in August for that application. Right now, we're adjusting, designed it at the start, so we're just repositioning all of that previous budget to a new timeframe. But there are some things that, are extending a lot longer than we thought. And maybe some activities when we negotiated with Kiewit that came up that were additional, but we'll bring that back.
I would like to give a shout out to both HNTB and Kiewit through this kind of a lull period that we've had because of uncertainty. You guys have done a good job of controlling your costs and not just spending money to spend money.
Well,
and you throttle back.
And we did, I will tell you, we did, and I think Kiewit is as well, did lose a few staff of the projects because of the delay. So like my drainage engineer is now in a whole different group within our company, and we just identified one actually this week to replace them. But so there will be some staffing adjustments that we're gonna have to make just because people need it.
That's kind of
nature of
this
delays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we resolved on the sign sealed plans? Okay.
100% signed and sealed plans, fully ready to go out to construction. Specs, everything.
Great. Nice job.
Yep. So that's all good. And I think James was on it. I appreciate Kiewit's ability to. This was not an easy thing for them. I think this is the first job they've actually taken that step. So it was a big step for their company to take on that. And I do appreciate them, negotiating with us and coming to that agreement with us. We did do an independent analysis. We had our staff independently develop a cost estimate as well as Kiewit developing theirs. So there was an independent analysis of people that are not on the job. to go through and make sure we're in a good place. So, we'll walk through all of that when we get the actual.
Okay, let's keep going with.
Yep.
Covered that.
The RUD, the status, I think we talked about, that is looking like a September finalization. Section 106, Christie was not be able to make it today, but I don't know, Rob, have you heard? I don't see Carol on. Any day now, we should be getting the Section 106 for signature. So we thought it was going to be Friday. It should be any day. It's went through all the reviews that it needs to go through. BIP info we've talked about quite a bit. We do have the BIP application workshop that is on July 23rd. Hopefully, a lot of you can make that. If not, at least send us your comments. You will get the application a couple days before that meeting. So if nothing else, at least send us what comments you have. We're also doing an independent review, and we're having an independent person review it, and we'll have them at the meeting as well. So we're trying to get everything that we can. Our team actually feels like this application is better than our previous applications, and stronger than the previous one. So I think we're in good shape, but we'll go through that with everyone.
We wouldn't expect you to say it was worse.
It's on Wednesday.
That we'll get the preview.
You should get it on Monday, if not the Friday before, but at least on Monday. So you get a 2-day review on it. Financial reports, that was in there if there's no questions. And then the bridge monitoring, James, I don't know if you want to give a quick, sorry, I know we cut you guys short, but you want to give a quick update on the bridge monitoring?
Well, if Wes is still here, he's been standing by, so
I'll see you now.
I don't
Yeah,
want to
Wes
steal
is
his
on.
thunder. He's been waiting.
All right. Wes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to update on. We got the PO done with Frontier. They moved forward with getting all the materials together. I tried to get a hold of Corey today to see if he had any updated delivery dates. Last time we talked, it was 5 to 6 weeks for the gear to come in. So when he gets some delivery dates, I already started talking to the ropes team about getting their contract going and schedule them for the work. But we need to have all the material, get it in the office, get it all configured, make sure we got all the right parts and pieces and they work together before we go out there and start installing it.
And you're coordinating directly with the port?
When I get the dates, I will coordinate directly with the port.
Okay, but you've had discussions with them. They know how you want to access the bridge for installation.
We've had those discussions, but not any specifics most recently. Like most of our discussions were about a month ago with them. They know that we want to do it, but we haven't talked to them exactly how we're going to access it.
I would encourage you to.
They gave me the ropes team contact. The ropes team is the team that installed the horizontal lifelines on the bridge already and does all the maintenance inspections for the gas line. So that all came from Ryan. I think we're good. We see a schedule when we get there.
When we did through the IGA with the port, make sure there was restrictions on how much they can close the bridge and when and what they can do. We limited single lane closures and no full closures during peak periods.
Okay, so be very, very careful now. You're in harvest.
Yep.
So you got to be very sensitive how much time you're closing the bridge.
Yep. So there's no full closures.
Yeah.
There's only one lane closure allowed, and there are time constraints where there's not during peak periods.
If I was on the port, I'd be asking you guys to work back shift because you've got fruit trucks going across that bridge.
Okay.
Every day now.
I don't think that we're going to need much for lane closures. Our goal would be to use the port's boat and be underneath the guys on the piers and have them raise the equipment to themselves.
Okay.
And then they access that pipe from the ends and they walk the length of the bridge on top of the gas line. The only thing that as of now, and I can't make any promises. The only reason I think we need to get on the bridge is for the weather station and the water height monitor.
Okay.
So we'll try to minimize it as much as we can.
Thank you. Upcoming anything to
No, other than with the right of way ramping up and Teal's here today, we're gonna start having him come back and do some of those presentations we talked about in the past, just to update everybody on right of way in general. So we'll start getting those planned out over the next few months.
So part of this congressional funding that we got, the $8 million, a piece of that $8 million for right-of-way acquisition. And then a piece of that was for the MOAs and MOUs for the tribe.
Another one for design.
Anything else around the room? Anybody have anything else that they want to say?
The only thing I would flag is maybe a recommendation that the governance committee could look into our agendas for our meetings, and maybe we put action items and true business at the start and we move reports and updates to the end to be able to accommodate people that might have work or other commitments. So we brought that up before, but maybe that would just be a good exercise to think about our agenda structure.
On Friday, I'm moving for a year to Florida. My husband was mobilized in the military, and so I will be moving to Florida with our two children. I will be attending meetings for the port in person 6 times over the next year. But if I'm not here in person, I plan to be here virtually.
And just to remind, you continue to be a Oregon resident.
Yes, I continue to be an Oregon resident. I still maintain my residency in my home that I still will own. We are not, I have the opportunity as a women-owned business to register as a women-owned business in Florida because I'm moving there, and we're not doing that because legally my residency is still in Oregon.
Well, we wish you safe travel. Hurry back.
My best. Not go to war.
Other items, anybody on the video?
Rob posted in the chat, section 106 signatures any day now, 2 to 3 weeks until everyone is signed. So I think that's a big win.
Okay. All right, thanks,
Thank
Rob.
you.
Thanks.
All right, with that, the next meeting is Monday, July 28th, 2 to 4. No, it's 3 to, did we move it back to 2?
It was always 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, okay.
We have a special meeting on the 3rd.
Yeah, we need to confirm that time.
Okay.
It is 1 to 3.
And 1 to 3 on the 23rd. With that, business is done. Thank you.
So did I. Thank you.
We have.